Three, two, one, action.
Well, let me tell you something, brother.
Hey, Andrew, how you doing, buddy?
Great. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
I can see you. I can hear you. Yeah.
We did it.
Oh,
Sorry for
now-
the flicker. Sorry for the flickering. There is the brightest light in this place, which I can't turn off, is
Okay.
behind a ceiling fan right over there.
It adds to
So
the adds to the cinematic vibe, you know.
yeah,
Sorry about
yeah.
the timing issues. I don't know either. It's I don't know if it's Ramadan and I'm fasting, so I've got the wrong time. So I don't know what's going on there. Sorry about
It's all good.
that. I
Um,
like the little setup in the background.
Thanks. Well, first of all, I want to acknowledge this is our trilogy episode. This is our third one.
Yes, it is.
Did
Yeah.
you did you think when you met me that we would set out to make this trilogy together?
I was hoping for it, maybe subconsciously, but
Um, no, but the I'm in a different location than the last two that we did, partially
okay.
because last summer the studio I was in previously
Mhm.
flooded.
Oh wow.
Uh, it flooded the day after my 40th birthday.
Oh wow.
Um, and I was in Los Angeles, and I have these little like water sensors that tell me if there's any water on the floor, and I had three of them in that were each like uh 40 feet apart from each other, and all three of them went off at the same time
Oh
and I
wow.
got the notification on my phone in Los Angeles that my house in Toronto was flooding. Um, so that sucked.
Yeah.
So I don't
Sorry
live
to hear
there,
about
or I don't live there or work there anymore.
that.
Uh,
Oh wow. Yeah, that's oh my God. That's I mean, talk about timing as well. 40th birthday.
yeah, yeah.
How
But
was the
I
how's the
got it.
recovery
I got it
been
back.
since?
It took a long time, but luckily I'm back on my feet and got another season of Dark Side of the Ring uh, under my belt.
Oh, well, I mean, I'm sorry to hear about that, but I'm glad to hear about the bounce back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we got it.
Mm.
Season six. I can't believe we're here talking about season six. It's amazing.
I know, yeah. And first of all, congratulations on another season six. I mean, I remember th talking to like Evan and Jason when like season two was happening, and around that time, I remember it was a constant like, will there be a season three? Will there be a season like what const that was a constant question and there was no answers. And now it's like a given, like or not a given, but it's like an expected thing now. Like, well, obviously there's going to be another season, and now we're like steamrolling into season six.
I hope that continues to happen, man.
Mm.
I mean, you've heard me say many times, it's my favorite show and it's the
Mm.
best job ever. So let's hope we get to 10 at least.
What's the mayhem? I know it's you enjoy it, but obviously there's a chaotic nature of obviously getting all the music stuff and done for it as well, because obviously the it's a fast turnaround. How's that been this go around?
It has been hectic for sure. Because this show is dovetailing with Jason and Evan's new show, which has just been announced, which is it's called Into the Void, and it's basically like a Dark Side of the Ring, but in the world of heavy metal.
Okay.
And so we're you know uh, we're doing initial stages of that show while like finishing off this show.
Mm.
So uh, it's uh, it's a lot of we have two meetings booked for two different projects at the same day sometimes. So,
So
but it's great.
it's been a double whammy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's great. I know I say this every time I talk to you, but there's some awesome episodes this season. They do it every time, and this season, when I saw the list of what they were doing, I mean, this is the season where less familiar with even more of the subjects perhaps than I was previously.
Hmm.
So I wasn't too sure of how it was going to go, but again, man, just there's some awesome episodes coming. Can't wait for you guys to see them.
Yeah, you've already. I mean, I'll jump right there because you already like alluded to a few. You said it was I'm gonna pronounce and I've wrote it down because I'm gonna pronounce the name incorrectly. Ludwig Borger.
Yeah,
And the Billy Jack Haynes episode you especially were given a mention to, which probably on the grand scheme, that's probably names that a lot of people are probably not as familiar with, like nowadays. Even Ludwig Borger, I mean, I somewhat familiar, but that were he kind of came and went very quickly in terms of in wrestling. But yeah, I think his aftermath was probably more eventful, maybe.
and I kind of vaguely remember him because from my era of watching because he had this sort of uh he had this angle with Tatanka, who I really liked, and he also had an action figure in the short period of time. And I think they actually made an Ludwig Borga action figure. So I kind of remember him having a bigger uh space or bigger space in my brain than the time he was actually there.
Yeah.
But the episode, I mean, uh they they got a lot of interviews from relevant people in Finland, and I mean, it's just such a great cautionary tale about a guy. I mean, I say cautionary tale, but there are echoes of his story of being a WWE personality turned sort of ultra nationalist politician, and what those effects and what his influence of pro wrestling on the body politic has been. And it's really fascinating to see it play out in a different part of the world that I wasn't super familiar with. And musically, the idea of a sort of isolationist, like violent isolationism, like I tried to bring that to kind of music that's inspired by Eastern European folk music. And
Because he was is it Finnish? Finnish? We're
yeah,
butchering
the
it from
Helsinki Hellraiser.
yeah.
So he was Finnish, yeah.
Yeah.
But you know, one of my big influences as a film composer has always been Howard Shore, and so I got to look at um, like Eastern Promises is one of my favorite Cronenberg films that Howard Shore scored, and there's a lot of influence like that that goes into the score, and paired with some of these interviews that are set there, I think it it the it will it the episode will like transport you in some ways and also uh be sort of a living nightmare for a lot of other reasons.
Yeah, I mean, he has quite the little I know. Obviously, I'm sure this episode is gonna kind of pull back a lot of the layers. Is very dark from his, and obviously Billy Jack Haynes was the other one that you mentioned, and that was, I believe you guys, if I'm correct, like obviously he's in prison right now, and
He's in prison.
they got interview with him obviously while he's serving a
Yeah.
sentence.
So they
It's
have
just
a
nuts.
jailhouse interview with Billy Jack Haynes, which is is very compelling to watch, and hear his similarly to sort of the Marty Jannetty episode of like trying to separate the fact from the fiction. And the
Mm.
first he's a guy who seemingly like inserted himself in a lot of news stories, whether truthfully or falsely, and to try and there's a lot of people to back up or to discredit some of the stories that he is telling. And so, you know, with the jailhouse interview and some of the stories that intersect with his story, there's moments in that episode that have some of my uh it, it brings back some of the nostalgia of like unsolved mysteries and the sort of classic true crime shows of the 90s that I love. And so I think people will be really into that. The
Does it
Jackie
give
episode.
a does it give a taste of like the I don't know, the Bruiser Brody episode in a way, like the kind of I don't know if there was a mystery necessarily with Brody's, but obviously it had that true crime vibe, didn't it, for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the Bruiser Brody one, it's kind of an account from a couple of perspectives on this murder, basically, and then the
Mm,
aftermath, and it ties in sort of how kayfabe affected it all, right?
mm,
This feels even more like a Errol Morris type of doc where you have a, I mean, he's in prison for murdering his wife, essentially. And, you know, I mean, he has this wrestling storyline and he can kind of chronicle, but his entire timeline, but uh, there's all of this extra stuff of that are basically unsolved mysteries that he maintains he is involved with. And different people have believe him in different measures and can corroborate his stories in some ways and not in other ways. And so there is a real uh, there is a real mystery there, and it's I found it really interesting.
I remember it's giving me flashes of I don't know if you ever saw the Ted Bundy tapes on Netflix, and obviously they have
I've not seen it. I'm familiar with it, but yeah,
they had the interviews with him while he was obviously in prison, and it was just like
yeah.
they had a chilling vibe. But I don't know if this has that because with Marty
It
Jannetty's there was almost
I
like
would
a
say that's accurate. It's definitely from the version that I've seen is very much there's a chilling effect. And seeing uh you know convicted killer talking about his story and what all goes into that, is it's haunting in a lot of ways. So and
yeah.
and backed up by testimony, sort of
Yeah.
his from his friends and family, and
It, this season definitely has the vibe of, not to say that previous seasons haven't been dark, obviously, to go along with the name Dark Side, but this seems to like almost push the reins even more, like with the Ludwig Borger and like Billy Jack Haynes, even Daphne's. Like there seems to be that extra layer of like really, really deep stories this time, or dark stories if you want to dub it that way.
yeah. Well, I'll just say that all of the uh, naysayers in the comments of the announcements who are like, there's really scraping the bottom of the barrel for these stories now. It's just like you don't you you don't know what you're talking about until you see them. Because again, like Jason and Evan are I some of the best storytellers in I mean they're working storytellers in documentary maybe ever, definitely right now.
Mm,
And there's it's going to be hard. Even Hell in the Cell, which is something I've seen some of the discourse being like, we've heard this to death, which is something that they said in the first season for Montreal Screwjob, and they said about the plane ride from hell, and
yeah.
you know, uh, it's I mean I've seen Hell in the Cell, but I've never seen it told like this, and the way that they break down sort of beat by beat how that happen, like how that match unfolds, is so thrilling to watch. Even when I was watching it, I was like, my heart was just going like, and I got to do like a we basically wanted to make like the Mick Foley opera for the music. So I like leaned into everything from Wagner and like Karl Orff to even Tchaikovsky, and just this idea of like the grand fall, and whether that's you literally talking about him falling off the cage or in the micro, or like that being the sort of the the big bump of his career, and him, the pinnacle of his career. And I had this like again, I was trying to make it an opera. There's a choir that sings on it that I just had the word falling. They're just singing the word falling in every, and I tried to make it subtle, but
It's
listening
very
back,
it's very literal, isn't it? Fully.
yeah, and with the accents, I thought it would be more subtle, but it doesn't sound like falling. It just sounds like Foley. So it just sounds like you have a chorus of people singing Foley, uh, which I was like, maybe happy accident,
Yeah.
but it's it's epically and tragically told, like on the
Mm.
scale of you know, uh, any operatic piece.
What that was, I was really interested to know about you scoring for that one. I mean, because that is one of the grandest, most memorable, iconic moments like ever in wrestling. Like no way, no doubt about it. Like it's for me, it's like an equivalent of like, you could pick like a marquee Hollywood movie or scene. Like I don't know, like Darth Vader, Luke, I'm your father. Like
Citizen Kane
yeah,
as
yeah,
a
like this is that. Like this is one of those marquee, like it's up there for all wrestling fans. And like it's one of those things like everybody knows, even like non-fans, they've kind of seen that clip of him falling off the cell. Was there does there come any pressure with something like that when you're kind of like, I have to now, oh, like this is iconic, this is everyone expects something grand for this. Like, do you feel that?
um to an extent. I mean, we've talked about this before, but there's always the significant amount of pressure just in the timeline and the deadlines, and just like trying to rise to the what I feel is the greatness of the show, and
Mm,
the work that Jason and Evan put in. There's always that pressure every single episode. Of course, this one, people bring a lot to something that they know, and the best thing I can do is just try and treat the material with respect, and where it needs to be big and epic, use the tools that I know can evoke that, whether that's the orchestra and the choir, or just the biggest drums or whatever, um, and hope we stick the landing. And you know, I I will say, yeah. So in this season, probably that one and maybe Daphne are the ones where it's just like I gotta nail this. But I wouldn't say that the pressure was any higher or more higher than like doing the Chris Benoit documentary, for instance,
mm, yeah, yeah, yeah.
or the Grizzly Smith one, where it's just like you threading a needle of tone from the most uh, from the depths of human emotion, and then being trying to be sensitive to that, and weave it with you know crazy wrestling angles and stuff. So
Yeah. To be fair, yeah, when you put it like that and you put those previous projects there, you're like, actually, you've dealt with quite a lot of, if you say pressure. So, and 9 times out of 10, if not 10 out of 10, you stick the landing very, very well. So I'm certain this will follow suit. But like having, like, obviously that episode, I mean, I had a similar reaction, not to the Hell in a Cell, but like when Montreal, like the first season, I was a bit like one of the skeptics, like, oh, like, what can you tell me that I don't know, kind of thing.
yeah,
But this one, I didn't not necessarily skeptical. I was actually very just curious. I'm like, though I am curious, obviously I haven't seen it yet. That like, okay, what's the angle here? Because by this point, I don't doubt Evan and Jason, and like I know the quality, but so I'm now more curious. I'm looking at what you're gonna do. What's the spin here? But if we rewind a bit, can you take me back to when you first saw that moment or that match and like your reaction to it? Because I mean, it's one of those, again, everyone has a story, I guess.
I mean, I saw it when I was a kid, and I think it was when the sort of veil was coming off about like sort of like all this isn't all like real, for instance.
Mm.
And I didn't, and like I when I saw a guy fall off the cage into a table, and like get up again and like climb up again. Like all of these things start to make, oh, the table must be padded. Like it actually had the opposite of effect
Oh,
when I saw it when I was a kid, which was just like oh, there's like things I don't understand because there's no way a human body could withstand what it appears that it's going through here. So it and again, this is my perspective as a child and kind of like coming out of my era being a deep fan.
hmm.
Um, but of course now my perspective has changed a lot since working on what is it, 75 documentaries about pro wrestling. Um, and and to see it told and with this to see it told by Mick Foley himself and what it meant to him going into it, what it meant to his family when that was happening and how it affected them, and um and internally what's going on between him and the referee and the Undertaker, and how they're navigating it all in real time. It is like it is one of the like I mean it's a piece of like it's like Shakespearean the level of insanity that this and the way that history will look at this match. It's crazy. And you know, musically tried to treat it as such.
Hmm.
Try to treat it. It's it deserves an opera.
Yeah.
You know, deserves to have an opera written about it.
I find every time I've revisited it, I've never, when I say revisited, whether I've heard news stories or another interview about it, I've never tired hearing about it, or because I find myself more and more riveted, like by it, and like
It's riveting.
yeah, the insanity of it. Like you just because you forget. Like obviously, it's happened. I've seen it 10 million times. But then when you dig into like what it actually is and what actually happened, you're like, oh my God, yeah, that actually happened. This was a human being, a 300 pound human being that fell off this and all
It's a
this.
miracle. Like
Yeah, yeah,
it's a man who like was within millimeters of dying 3 or 4 times in a short period of time in front of what 30,000, 40,000 people or something,
yeah.
and somehow live to wrestle another day. It's like it is a miracle, and when
He
you understand what he uh withstood to to walk away from that, it's it I mean it's a human triumph.
for sure. And he came. I think he came back later that night. Like he came in the main event for Stephen Kane's match,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is
It's if there was ever a case for human invincibility, that like is it's it's probably that. Like
I also found it funny. I mean, obviously, I understand the context of the episode and why this is a dark side episode, but it's funny in some ways looking at it that the nicest man ever in professional wrestling has a dark side episode.
yeah, I mean he's been on a lot.
Yeah.
He was nearly our narrator, I guess, because he narrated Bruce Brody, which is the
Mm,
pilot. And then I think due to uh his obligations with the WWE, he couldn't ultimately do the rest of the series,
mm,
which you know, and we ended up getting Chris Jericho, which is amazing.
yeah.
Um, but he's been such a uh, like Jake Roberts and like Cornette too. You know, has been such a cornerstone of our show because
Mm,
he he can give he can give such empathy for so many of these characters, and he witnessed so much of it, and he's very well spoken. He's a very good storyteller. So, um, yeah, it's not surprising that he's. I mean, when you just tell, if he tells his one big moment, that it's going to be compelling. And I for people who haven't like the people who are not so deep in the wrestling lore, I guess, like. they won't like when they watch it, they won't believe it. And it is so like it gets your adrenaline going. And the way that Jason and Evan tell it in their sort of way, it's like it's better than any playoff basketball or it's like it, I was sweating watching the rough cut. It's crazy.
I mean, I was just watching the trailer and they have the little build up to him falling. And I know he's going to fall, obviously. But even then,
Yeah.
I was like getting sucked in because obviously I have all the sound bites of the interviews. And yeah, like I'm very, very pumped for it. And Evan, I was listening to the Unheard Dark Side podcast today and they had one on Mick Foley. And Evan said it felt quite fitting that they're doing this episode dedicated to, and it's almost like a tribute to Foley and his sacrifice to the art form and it's like almost like right that they're doing it because he's meant so much to the show and he kind of put the show on the map very early on.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's hard to say how much traction we might have gotten without him in the early days. So uh God bless Mankind.
You mentioned Daphne's episode, and that's obviously like a really unfortunate story, like that happened with her. And I remember like not only watching her in TNA and things of that nature, but obviously when the news happened, um, it kind of strikes me as this season's like this is the one that's going to really leave us with a lot of like the aftermath of something like really, really powerful and meaningful and like almost important takeaway from the episode. And almost like it feels like the Graham family episode of this season in a way, where
Yeah.
like that really, that one like really it caught with me and there was such a takeaway from that. Like it feels like that is might be this season's version, if you will.
Yeah, anytime Dark Side of the Ring has additional content warnings than it already has, it's probably a good bet. Um, but it is a tragic story that is beautifully told, and you know, again, testament to Jason and Evan and the huge hearts that they have, that they're able to find a way to land the plane of depression or not depression, land the plane. They found a beautiful ending for it. So even like the most striking thing about the Benoit two part is even though you get dragged through hell for 88 minutes, there's a glimmer of hope at the end. When you see Sandra and David, I guess, like go to an AEW match with and reunite. I think they have that in this. So, um, you know, but it's gonna. We talked before about the lump in the throat. It's
Hmm.
gonna be that for the first 40 minutes.
I know I'm looking forward to it. And I think I mentioned this to you last time as well. Like when you mentioned earlier, people kind of maybe insulting the list as like a scraping like the barrel. It's not like, and I think people forget it's not about the names necessarily. It's about this is storytelling. This is about the quality of content and the stories that are there to be told. So like it doesn't like and there's been so many examples of the past seasons where some of the best episodes were the names that were not by no means the biggest. So it
Yeah, of
surprises
course.
me that that is still a thing. I mean, I guess maybe it doesn't surprise me. The internet is, an interesting place. Um, but like, does
Yeah, I
that?
mean, in the same paragraph is one person mad that we're doing Hell in a Cell and someone else being mad that we're not doing Hell in a Cell
Yeah,
or
yeah,
something like that. So uh, it takes a lot, but like I mean, the show people continue to love and resonate the show, and we continue to like. I mean, it's our life's work at this point. Like, I don't know if I'll ever be a part of something that's had as like deep of an impact to as many people as Dark Side of the Ring, and anyone who is skeptical about this season, uh, you shouldn't be.
yeah. Was there any names this season that caught you off guard? Because I guess I mean, necessarily, it's not necessarily us. We expect there'll be different names, but sometimes even I still see the list and I'm like, oh, like I didn't see that come in, or who's that? Or like, like the Ludwig Borger one was like, that was like a real blast from the past for me. It was like, oh, okay.
Um, Probably Billy Jack Haynes is the one I don't think I saw a single match from him. Like I mean, I've seen. I think he might have been in one of the first three WrestleManias or a couple of the first three WrestleManias, but I can't. I don't have a remember. I don't. Were kind of before my time, and I watched them on VHS when I was a little bit older, and they didn't stick with me. He didn't. His gimmick didn't stick with me as a child, so I
Yeah.
was not like super familiar with him, and it wasn't an episode that made a big impact on me. And Ludwig Borga, I didn't know anything about his story post wrestling. I remember him from the time, but you know, uh, probably those two. I mean, there's like Eddie Gilbert and the superstar Billy Graham episodes that like I know a bit about, mainly from especially territories and previous Dark Side episodes. So it filled in a lot of uh, info about them for me that I didn't know. Um, but yeah, Billy Jack Haynes is the one that is like Chris Colt was last season, where it's just like I didn't know anything about this guy, and this is like I'll never be able to forget it now.
Yeah. It feels horrible to say this word when you associate it to like a story like this, but I'm hoping people get what I mean. But like it's so wild to when you have like these gems in a way, like a Chris Cole and I what I mean by gem, I mean like the uniqueness of the story. Obviously, they're quite obviously problematic in some respect, the tales, but obviously the how they just come out of the woodwork almost compared to everything else that you would expect.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, they take a somewhat of a like when you set out to do a season of television, a constant thing people are bringing up. How come you haven't done this person? How come you haven't done this person? This is so obvious. Why haven't you done this? Blah blah blah. And they always set out, they put their feelers out for a bunch of ideas, and it's hard to get access to things, and it's hard to like. In some cases, there might not be a whole hour worth of content there, or sometimes it might be bigger, and we might be able to get better access if we wait a few months or this and that. But they take a risk in sort of committing to any of these episodes, because you got to go fly all over the world potentially to like film these people, and hopefully there's something in it. And so when you like get kind of an uncut gem out of an episode, out of a story that you sort of had an inkling could be pretty good, and then it's something like, I'm sure they didn't know if they could get into the prison to interview Billy Jack Haynes, right? Like, and it's
Yeah,
like, and they could have
because
done the episode without him.
yeah, they tried for the Sunny episode, right? I remember
Well, for
they
Sunny,
yeah they
exactly.
couldn't get it.
So that almost happened, and it was right. It was literally like weeks before it was going to go on air. There still seemed to be a possibility, and then her sentencing came up, and the lawyer, I don't know, said, well, I don't know, but I don't know. But
Yeah,
like, these things happen, and it would have been amazing to get Sunny for that episode, but in that they drew out the story of Chris Candido even more, and potentially there's another Sunny episode to be made at some point when you can talk to her and get
yeah,
her good. I don't know, but yeah, the that Billy Jack Haynes episode, you know, it 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 becomes something bigger because you have the man himself there, from speaking from his own experience, and to bolster all of the other crazy stories around him.
yeah. One episode that I'm imagining is very much in time with your fandom, and I know I'm looking forward to this. Not because I have any inkling of what the story is going to be, just because I'm just such a fan, is Vader,
Yeah,
which is almost
yeah,
getting lost in the shuffle of the all these episodes. But I mean, I mean I love Vader. I'm a huge fan of Vader, so I'm like just yeah, I'm just really interested for just the sole purpose of I'm a fan of him.
yeah. And Vader looks so cool, especially with the helmet and the shoulder pads and the shooting fire and stuff.
Mm,
And so a lot of the reenactment stuff they got to do with him is really cool, and like I think like the family like has the helmet and they like bring the
Oh,
helmet out
awesome.
and so like I got to, and a lot of his story takes place in Japan, so I was like listening to kind of a lot of anime stuff with Gigantor and like different like mech series. It's like because he's kind of this like robot demon. Like when you see the footage of him in Japan and fire shooting out of him and stuff, it's just like it's it's so fucking cool and like aggressive. Like, so the score on that one is like it's very dark, it's very synthy and banging and uh even in the sort of lighter family uh moments, it sounds like a JRPG kind of in some ways.
Were you ever tempted to like take from his WWE theme? Because I mean that was very, very iconic. It's time. It's
Yeah,
time.
yeah. I yeah, this is one of those things I I listened to and I'm like, how can I do the cinematic version of this? And it just like didn't come to a head. And this is like another thing I like tried to do on the Hell in a Cell episode that I think is a great idea, and I think I'll do it on another episode, but it just didn't work for Hell in a Cell was uh there's a whole in the Hell in a Cell match where he brings out the thumbtacks.
Yeah, yeah.
I tried to re-record the strings through my speakers on their backs with covered in thumbtacks.
Oh,
And
you went hardcore, Andrew.
yeah, and it it just didn't quite work for like that whole score is just it's a I mean it's full orchestra and choir and just like it just got a little bit too avant-garde, but like whoever the next death match star is that we do, I might bring that episode out again, but or bring that idea out again, I should say.
No one can ever question your dedication to the craft, Andrew.
Thank you for saying so. I mean, I'm no Mick Foley. Maybe I'm the Mick Foley of wrestling music composers.
Yeah, it sounds like it. One episode I will say selfishly, like I'm very intrigued by because I vividly remember living his rise and then sudden departure, Muhammad Hassan, which was I mean I don't know, I think that was maybe past when like you were maybe as in actively watching WWE.
It's a bit
Wait,
after my time, yeah.
yeah, but I was I mean I very much remember that was very much me in the thick of it as a youngster, and I remember he was his rise and then obviously he just vanished, and I was like I remember vaguely hearing the reasons why, and I also remember being upset at the time because I was like, from just a creative standpoint, I was like, he's doing a damn good job. Like people really hate
Yeah,
him, and poor guy is like victim of circumstance, and he's just like
yeah,
brushed away. Did you? Because obviously his character was obviously very sensitive. That the Muslim kind of almost terrorist-like vibe kind of
yeah.
going on for it. Did you ever like even think of dabbling in that kind of sounds like culturally or like how was that kind of?
No, the take musically that I'm going with is more, it's more the idea of like headline news. Like I mean, that character is drawn out of the aftermath of 9/11,
Hmm.
and so much about 9/11 is the 24-hour news cycle. And so that is sort of the musical touchstone that I'm leaning more towards.
Hmm.
And but a similar, I mean, this season we also have an episode about the Sheik,
Yes.
and uh, you know, similarly, it's like I I'm not trying to make a pastiche of like gritty Middle Eastern music or something like that. It's
Hmm.
like we're trying to lean on that episode, which is an amazing episode onto itself. It's more about um, the reaction to him in his time, you know, snakes and fireballs is like almost this classic horror character, um, that then like becomes this like uh becomes the like he gets really into gambling and he's in Vegas all the time and he's driving, so it's one part like classic horror and one part lifestyles of the rich and famous, I guess. Um, but yeah, it's sometimes these things uh come up where any even Ludwig Borga, when I talk about like referencing Eastern European folk music, there's like Finnish instruments I tried to like research a bit and see if I could incorporate, and some of that stuff kind of got incorporated, but it's more like alluded to, and it's like it it just depends if it's relevant and uh and how it fits into the dark side of the ring idiom, uh and a lot of different cultural and world music, uh you know if I'm going to do it, if I need to do it authentically, then I will either like hire people to like collaborate with me to do so, or I will do it in the most abstracted way that it just you know to uh that it's telling the story and just setting the tone, you know.
Mm. Yeah, because your job, I mean, obviously your job at the end of the day is to obviously service the story, and like the music in a way should be, obviously you tell me if I'm wrong, of course, should be kind of seamless. Like we feel it, but we don't maybe necessarily, I don't notice it, if that makes sense. Like it should flow with the story almost like effortlessly. So obviously some of these things
Yeah, I
could
want
take
it.
away, right?
Yeah, I want it. I want to be a filmmaker. I don't want to be a composer whose music is in films. I mean,
Mm, yeah, yeah,
if
yeah,
that
yeah,
distinction means anything.
yeah, yeah.
And I was recently doing uh, a an animation series, like a kids animation series, and I talked a lot to the director on that about how like I want my music to, and how I approach the music to like help create the illusion of the animation. And when you do classical 2D animation, there's like you're trying to create you're trying to create these things such as like stretch and bounce and bend and these things to like create the illusion of animation and this thing being alive. And like what is the musical version of that? And it's like how do I sonically accompany or sonically create this illusion along with what you're doing visually?
Mm.
And so when you port that idea to like we're not doing 2D animation, but it's like if you're trying to create a dream sequence and or a dreamy uh sort of like recounting of a story, it's with smoke and things are backlit and visually they're approaching it this way, and I try and use my tools to help create that illusion as well. And so if I you're just doing the most uh surface level, you know, this character is supposed to be an Arabic character, so here's blatantly this, are we actually transporting anyone anywhere, or are we just are we just chat GPTing our to the uh the sort of most superficial uh approach to something.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, that's why you guys are who you are, because this level of detail. I mean, it does actually remind me of something that I was doing actually today, actually, or yesterday. I'm currently doing my master's in screenwriting, and like we were learning about, we were talking about dialogue, and we were saying that, or my lecturer was saying that you should think of dialogue as an action. And like instead of like just obviously random words, and like think of it as an action and what is it servicing? What is it doing? So how is it telling the story? And it will help you create more effective dialogue. And it sounds a bit like that in terms of your music. Like it's like how is this obviously maybe I don't know if you're treating it as an action, but it's what is this music doing
Yeah,
for
no, I mean, I think for when I spoke to you before, I we talked about how everything, I think, try and think of every moment as an action and an emotion,
yes,
and
actually
like
did, yeah.
distilling, and I talked about the Judith Western books and how, as directors, all the only thing you can give an actor is a verb, basically. And I basically distilled it now that there's kind of like 16 that is like almost everything I do musically is one of those verbs, and it is effective in my sort of storytelling approach. And it's just and the 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 uh craft of it is finding a way to transition between these verbs, and the way that the thing that I think that a film composer, a television composer does, uh and why it's an essential job to the storytelling, is creating those transitions. And it's like it's helping propel the transition of when the actor or the subject's face goes from happy to sad, to make it very obvious. But how musically you move from one to the next thing. But sort of as I think we discussed before, it's just like, often in Dark Side and stuff like that, I just get a bunch of shots of legal documents,
Hmm.
or crime scene photos, or newspaper clippings, or like family photos, and in that case, it becomes my job to imbue imbue the story with a forward motion
Hmm.
and a forward action. And it's like, and whether we're like and it's the like deep work, if you want to call it, that I do, is identifying, like, are we rallying now, are we struggling now, are we limping, are we crawling, are we pushing, you know and because musically those things all evoke different tool sets,
Hmm.
both in terms of musical theory, but as well as synthesizer or or whatever. And and that's the important part of what I do. And my wife is a screenwriter, and
Oh well.
so we bounce a lot. We talk a lot about the parallels of these things, or how, you know, occasionally. She's
Hmm.
obviously a lot. I mean, she's a showrunner, and she's had hundreds of hours of stuff, of scripted stuff that's been produced, and she she knows that there's a lot of what I talk to her is very like uh 101 to her, I guess.
Yeah.
Um uh but yeah, certainly dialogue is action. When I was a picture editor, I would when I was making selections to go into the edit, it's just I'm just looking for the shots of the verbs.
Hmm.
Like, when if you're looking for a reaction shot, even if it's just a static like reaction shot, it's like, well, where do I see them being moved by this, or having a, a visual response to that.
Hmm.
So I mean, it's called motion pictures, and and we can say that, like, as a literal for a literal reason of like it's a picture that moves, but it's it can create movement. It's supposed to galvanize you. It's supposed to uh, uh and at the most basic level, a story is, this thing moves to this place, basically. Or And you can distill that in everything from how my how these six notes that I play as a theme change from this point to this point, or how this person's bedroom looks like at the beginning of the story versus the end of the story, or how their hair looks when they feel this way about themselves versus when they feel this way about themselves.
Hmm.
And you know the 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 more layers of that are, you know, um, designed to be giving you one idea or like one point of view, one message, the sort of stronger the thing is. And I mean, that's why film is the most beautiful art form.
100%. And I love also the you getting so like detailed like about that kind of explanation of the process and things of that nature, because I've said it before to you that your music is a pivotal part of the series because of like it adds so much to the moments and why I'm so like we talked about the Benoit when he's on the phone call and he hears about Eddie dying and the music with that, like they were just the music makes it so memorable as well. So like I'm glad and people can hear this level of detail that you put into the work you do, and I think it's just like it's a testament to you, and we can appreciate it even more, I think. So again, I say it all the time, but amazing job.
Well, thank you, sir. And thanks for putting me over. I mean, again, this is our trilogy episode. You've complimented me to this effect dozens of times. So I thank you for honoring the work I do, even if it's as silly as putting thumbtacks on a speaker to try and make
I
something happen for a Mick Foley story.
I never tire of it, and I mean I have a few last few questions before I let you go,
Yeah.
Andrew. And this, I mean, we talked about last season. Is there any episodes this season that are top five that are up there that could crack that?
Uh,
it's one of the all-time list.
um, from my favorite of this season from what I've seen, and I caveat it every time, which is that I only see a rudimentary version. I have not seen all the reenactments yet. I probably won't see it till everyone else sees it. But just judging on the sort of rough cuts that I've seen, Ludwig Borga, Billy Jack Haynes, and Daphne are the ones that I think had the deepest impact to me. Um, Man, I mean, we're talking about 60 episodes now. Like coming up with a top 10 is going to be difficult for what my favorites are. But those ones to me, oh God, I mean, Hell in the Cell is brilliant too. But
Yeah, you did
it's
mention that one earlier to me as well, like that was one of the highlights for you, you said.
yeah, you know, um, it's uh, I'll just say that those are the ones to me that they're sort of like vibrating the most in the version that I've seen of them, and I think that they'll have a pretty strong impact with most people too. And again, I like every once in a while these lists come out of the top 10 Dark Side episodes, and I think I know what they're going to be, and I'm oftentimes surprised with uh, not not because I don't think every episode is great in its own way, but just what I think is in the zeitgeist are the the ones that people are talking about the most. Sometimes it's different than what I think.
I can't remember if I asked you this actually. Do you have a number one?
Um, geez, it I've got to say, if I had to pick one, uh, and this is more about around my work on it, is
Hmm.
the Grizzly Smith episode.
Okay, yeah.
But that's God. I mean, there's things that happen across. Like I could talk about lots of reasons on different episodes why I think they're really important and special. Grizzly Smith episode for me was just it's. I just think I think I was able to like achieve something beyond myself in a way. Like I had sort of a complicated idea that I was trying to do, and I think it landed. And I think it's an episode that's like obviously very sensitive subject matter, and yet we've like ended up, you know, driving the landing the plane uh without it just being a total downer, similarly to Benoit. But yeah, it's just like I had this idea on it of every character in the family being kind of a different instrument in this kind of broken Texas ensemble, and and it brought in things I loved about sort of growing up, or the time I spent in Montreal around bands like Godspeed You Black Emperor and these like post rock bands, but it was also its own thing. So that's the one where, and I think like Evan said that's my masterwork or something on Twitter at the time, and when I made it, I felt like, oh, this is the best thing that I've done as a composer yet, and I think I've gotten better since then, but I feel like that was just it was a threshold that I crossed, and it was like I needed a film that good to like push me there. You know what I mean? But like Bruiser Brody was a different version of that. Benoit was a different version of that. Uh, you know, Chris Colt was a different version of that in another season. The Von Erichs episode is a different version of that,
Yeah.
and I do really get like uh, uh, I get better like the better the like material is that I get, seemingly like I it actually helps me grow. So
Yeah.
so I'm grateful to those guys for letting me take on those challenges and uh and hopefully contributing to the like impact that they've had.
100%. And I mean, you didn't ask, but I'll just give you mine. I think my Benoit still stands as number one for me, I think.
I mean, most people would probably say that the same
Yeah.
thing as if I had to guess. And um, it's I've said it to you before. I've said it in other places. It's like I think that is one of the best documentaries on any subject
Yeah.
ever made.
Yeah. No,
And
100%.
and you know they should put that one in the Library of Congress or whatever
Yeah.
that they do.
No, I agree.
Um,
I mean, that's the
and
one I showed to people who aren't fans. That's the one I recommend. I'm like, watch this.
yeah, there's a few of those that because you got to gauge the person because it's like who is ready to be dragged through the depths of
Gee.
human emotion and hell and for 88 minutes to watch that. And for the people who do, they get it and they understand that you're in the hands of master storytellers who have an amazing point of view and big heart.
Hmm.
Um, but like New Jack is that for other
Yeah,
people,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
Pillman also is a special
Pillman
one, I
is that
think.
for
Yeah.
other people.
Yeah.
Bruiser Brody is that for other people. Von Erichs is that for other people. Um, I mean, Gino Hernandez. We haven't talked about
Oh my God, yeah.
Gino Hernandez
Yeah, yeah.
episode, but like, you got to remember, this is the first season, and they like interview the guy's poor mother who's been living in fear for 40 years that the mafia killed her son and will kill her if she ever speaks out about it, and she's feels like she's not long for this world and just ready to speak. And they go and they track down the like mob boss who she's been afraid of and interview him and play her the tape of him setting the record straight that he's didn't kill her son and has never had any ill will towards her and like only
Yeah.
this
Like you solved like the show solved a mystery in the
it's
telling
the
of the story.
in the telling of in the making of a Dark Side of the Ring episode, like solve this mystery of the guy's death in a way. It's like
Yeah.
how you're not going to get that on diners, dives, and drive-ins or whatever. You know what I mean?
But I think that goes to show the impact the show's had as well. It's like insane. Like Owen Hart has come back into the forefront of wrestling again. Owen Hart tournament at AEW, all that stuff. And I would
Yeah,
contribute that to Dark Side of the Ring. Like because of that
yeah. I'm
episode,
100
it kickstarted.
percent.
I'm wearing one of the shirts that came out of Owen
Oh,
Hart
amazing!
like right now because I mean, and we had no merchandise before that, and then now Owen celebrated again, and he's back in the limelight, which I
And he
loved. And
deserves it.
oh,
And when
100%.
you see that storytelling, you're like, this is a guy like he deserves it. He deserves a tournament to be in. He deserves to be in the Hall of Fame and all
Mm,
like any accolades. He's just a legitimate great dude who was incredible at what he did and just died so tragically and for the stupidest reason, and
mm.
so I'm glad that I get to be part of like honoring that legacy and that's another score that I'm very proud of and it's like get to do this Calgary Western romantic tragedy score. It's like how many opportunities in any composer's career will they get to to do a more singular genre than that? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. This next question is one I thought of as I hope it's fun, but it might be a bit challenging as well. If you were to take one of the Dark Side episodes and it was going to get made into like a feature, like Hollywood film, which one would you pick? And then who would you cast as the lead, as the actor to play that subject?
Oh wow. So I've Jason and I maybe I shouldn't be talk about this because it could happen someday maybe, but I mean it's so far away that like Jason and I have talked a lot about doing like if there was a New Jack episode that was just based on one night of like him getting in the ring and following him through like some kind of bounty hunting like adventure after or before or in the middle of a wrestling card. I think that there's like a really fun movie to be made in that. I also think there's an amazing Doctor David Schultz
Oh, yeah.
like I think there's an awesome Doctor or David Schultz like prestige cable series to be made. Like I think you could get a Josh Brolin type to play this guy who's like a famous wrestler turned disgraced wrestler who then becomes a bounty hunter who's like bounties know him from wrestling and it could be a dark comedy much like Barry or something like that. Uh, and that's an idea that I like we like sort of
Go around.
you know bat around it for fun. You know there's but God there's a lot. I mean maybe they'll make more. I mean in post Iron Claw and all this maybe they will make more and you'll
Yeah.
get more episodes out of it.
Yeah.
You'll get to do more episodes of it but yeah I've
That,
thought a lot about like a New Jack like continuous take going from wrestling ring to locker to the car to driving to some kind of bounty to and I don't know if there's a true story that would be based it'd be only based off of his persona and like some of the events in his life maybe but
that could,
uh
I mean, that could go in many ways as well. Okay? You could make that maybe a comedy. You could, if however you wanted to spin that, but I mean, it could work very well.
yeah and I don't have a strong idea of who you could cast to play him off the top of my head um
Yeah,
but
that's a very particular type of
yeah
character, right?
you need a very you, I mean you need a very specific type of charisma to pull that.
Yeah. And I'll just leave you with this, Andrew. This is maybe not so much a question, but I mean, I mentioned there I'm doing my master's currently, and me and my lecturer, who's also a wrestling fan, after one of the lectures, just kind of went off on a tangent, and we were started having a conversation about I think it was at the time of the Mr. McMahon documentary, and then we started talking about that, and we were just talking about a bunch of other things, and we talked so long that actually one of the other students that was, I think, waiting to talk to him, drifted away because I think she didn't want to hear about wrestling anymore. Um, but but then we were talking about that, and he then actually brought up, he was like, but still, among all of these new like films that are coming out, the Mr. McMahon series, all that kind of stuff, and they're getting the attention, but he's like, the standard bearer still remains Dark Side. And he's like, if I'm going to show my wife anything wrestling related, she's like, it's going to be Dark Side. And he's like, that's the pinnacle of like wrestling storytelling still. Just like how does that make you? How does that like sound to you? Like just hearing that, like from
It's
another angle, I guess you could say.
I mean it's a deep honor, and it's, you know, I feel like it's a testament. I keep putting them over, but they deserve it. Jason and Evan and their authenticity and their like willingness to uh try and honor the stories without being propaganda, and be journalistic, and bring style and class to, you know, these stories. And, you know, for them it was important to have original music to do so, right? And that's where I came in, and I'm very grateful, and it's, you know, changed my life, and I'm very proud of it. And I hope it continues to be the standard bearer in people's minds, and we get to make lots of episodes. And uh you know, it's the hard thing, and all of those other, or a lot of those other documentaries, especially, maybe not Mr. McMahon, but are like basically, propaganda is maybe too strong of a word, but they're basically company sanctioned tellings and retellings, and you know, has a lot of inevitably has a lot of uh
Agendas.
editorializing and agendas, which Jason and Evan's only agenda is like making like telling great stories and honoring this art form that they have loved their entire lives. And, you know, unfortunately, you know, some people have caught a few strays in the midst of that, but through no fault of Jason and Evan, or any kind of like uh, ill will or agenda. They're just
Mm.
trying. They're just there to tell the stories. And so I think that authenticity is uh, why it resonates with people, and for people to see this thing that they love, that uh, a lot of times gets treated as lowbrow or down market, or whatever the terms are, with real style and prestige, you know. And so uh, thank you, and thank your lecturer for helping us sort of try and champion this mission and
Yeah.
this these films. And hopefully, again, just call your congressman, call your member of parliament, uh, tell them you want more Dark Side of the Ring. Call your. I mean, I think Vice just had made a deal with ITV and
Oh wow.
in the UK, so you should hopefully be seeing Dark Side on ITV4 at least now. And
There's also, I think ITV have a like a it's like an online, like you can rewatch the episodes, things that were aired, so you can watch it the next day kind of thing. I believe I'm correct in that. So there's like
yeah, I don't.
so if you miss it live, you can watch it again, like on like catch up.
Yeah, I don't know how that all works. Like when it's all getting rolled out, and like if
Hmm.
that corresponds with the new season, if and whatnot. But from the Variety article or whatever that came out, it seems like to our dear friends in the United Kingdom, uh, hopefully you'll get to see all the dark side that you might not have been able to see before
That's that.
in a fairly centralized spot.
That's no, that's a success, and that's a great story, and I'm glad now, and thank you. Like, and I like obviously on a very small scale, this is a side pivot, but like Dark Side is like whether I realize it or not, also an inspiration for me. Like a lot of my scripts and ideas that I'm kind of rolling out now always have a wrestling spin. I mean, obviously everything I do seems to have a wrestling spin, but but like even my scripts are all kind of they have a they're birthed in wrestling, but then obviously they come out. And Dark Side showed me how you can really bring out the human stories, but within this kind of wacky world. And whether I realize it or not, I've definitely taken inspiration from that as a storyteller in my own little way.
That's amazing, and hopefully the children of Dark Side of the Ring in their many forms will uh, ring out in the cable series of the future.
I hope so. Thank you again, my man. every time is a pleasure, and I hope we can, like I said, hope another season comes, and I hope we can do it again.
Yeah, cross all your fingers, and good luck on the Masters of Screenwriting.
Thank you very much, man. Thank you. I'll leave you there,
All the
buddy.
best.
Thank you.
You too. Ciao.